The Mystery of BELICENA VILLCA. Fourth Book. The Story of Kurt von Superman. Chapter 14. 1 hour later, from the window of the northern train, I saw passing the last neighborhoods of Berlin. I was raptured, thinking in the letter of Rudolf Hess, and regretting for have not been capable to interview him, and transmit him some important questions which required urgent response. Something extraordinary was happening to me, since some time ago and, except for Rudolf Hess, I not dared to trust in anyone. Since the night of the graduation, when I was presented to the Führer, I began to experience a curious psychological phenomenon. In that occasion, I responded, Eve Satan, to the questions of the Führer. Who is the enemy of Germany? Against whom are we fighting? And, I believed to recognize that, such answer had not been reasoned by me, but caught, or heard, with an internal ear. For me, there were no doubts that the hurt voice was not mine. It means that it came from out of my consciousness. But, I also comprehended the impossibility to transmit that experience to another person without running the risk to inspire distrust about my sanity. During the journey to Egypt, I meditated on this, and I reached to the conclusion that the presence of the Führer had unchained an unconscious phenomenon of discharge, being the hurt voice, just a formal intuition. It means that, in some manner I knew the answer and, in one moment in which I was psychologically logged by the overwhelming personality of the Führer, I divined, or believed to have done it, taking an intuition for an extrasensorial perception. It was a skeptical conclusion, but I had the security that such phenomenon would be merely circumstantial, that it would not happen again. I clung to this certainty, with the hidden fear that its repetition would imply a loss of the rational equilibrium. It is comprehensible, in a society that considers normal what is common to everyone, that's to say collective, and represses with the alienation the one who is separated from the normal. To feel oneself different can be dangerous in many senses. Mainly, because the lack of patrons, or models, eliminated systematically or auto-eliminated by the fear to compare our abnormality, induces us to fear a loss of reason. That fear for the possession of gifts or virtues which could make us different to the rest is considered a holy prudence, in a world that glorifies the mediocrity of the average man, and distrust from the individual. Thereby, timorous of the implications that would have to consider that experience as a real phenomenon, I attributed the hurt voice to a projection of the unconscious to the conscious. However, the phenomenon occurred again, and not one but many times, with the following alarm by my part that feared to suffer a kind of schizophrenia. But, once I discarded the doubts, and meditated serenely, I could not stop recognizing that this phenomenon was far from being dangerous, and I'd say that it was even nice. The motive of such conclusion was in the security that I felt now that the hurt voice was absolutely out from my being. Of course, it could be argued that the security that a man can have in the perception of phenomenons belonging to his own sphere of consciousness is completely subjective. And it is true due to, in general, the security doesn't guarantee in any way the truth of its affirmation. For example, when a hunter feels secure to have hit the prey, and urges the fire, or when the student sure to have given the right answer verifies that the professor has qualified him with a 0, it can be said that the security has failed. Of what depends then the success if when I am sure to have obtained it, I can fail? To respond it must be distinguished before between subjective security and objective security. The first is closer to the imagination, and the second to the reality. The subjective security supports in the faith. The objective security supports in the reality. Who believes to take an apple with hand, and what he really takes is an apple, undoubtedly disposes of objective security. Instead, if he believes to take an apple, but really takes another thing, his security is subjective. There's then a gap between the subjective security and the objective security that, according to the individuals, can reach to be an abyss. But it is desirable that the experienced security in what is done or thought be the most objective possible. Then, how must be done to close the gap that separates the objective security from the subjective security? Saving the case of a natural predisposition from the objective reality, the answer would be the previous experience assures major probabilities that the security in the accomplishment of an act be realized objectively. If it is desirable to understand the theme better, must be distinguished also between the dilettante and the expert. Before a same test both feel secure, but with major probability, only the expert is found in the previous experience, the one of the dilettante in the faith on himself. But, as every expert in some initial moment had to be a dilettante, it is possible that the dilettante perseveres, one day reaches to be an expert. Therefore, the security is much more objective as more accompanied by the experiences. But, is the subjective security betrayed by the objective reality? If it fails, ensues the deception of the defeat. It must be concluded, then, that the capacity to overcome the defeats is a conditioning factor to capitalize the experience in favor of the objective security. The security, otherwise, is a fundamental psychological attitude to face the proofs of life. Who faces to the challenge of a test must count with the success beforehand, must be sure to gain, and a defeat won't discourage him as to not try it again. In the previous cases, neither the hunter stops hunting for missing a shot, nor the student stops studying for failing in an exam. Both overcome and capitalize the experience, increasing their objective security, being more experts. Considering these concepts, now, can be understood my attitude before the phenomenon of the voice, concluded that being psychically prepared during many years in a rigorous intellectual training, the security that disposed the certainty of the judgments was quite objective. It means that, intellectually, when I was sure about a concept it was surely correct. And with such security so objective in the judgments, said me that the voice that I heard not came from my unconscious, it doesn't form part of myself, it was strange to my spirit, or it was, perhaps, another spirit. I must outstand that, the security that I had to be in the right was accompanied with a profound analysis in which considered, amongst other things, the fact that the voice was capable to emit concepts that I didn't know in no way. This can have an explanation more or less psychological, but some concepts were very specific, and however, the voice utilized and structured them with great precision. Ergo, the voice was wise, and this has no real fetched explanation, except, if it is accepted what it really is, that the voice belonged to a psychic entity stranger to me. Another element of the phenomenon that I took in consideration for the analysis was the fact that it had not been spiritually invaded by another entity as occurs in the diabolic possession, or in the spiritism, but that to my consciousness reached just the voice, clear and energetic, without psychosomatic consequences of any kind. It means that, when the phenomenon occurred I didn't see, nor feel, nor like, nor smell, nothing unusual. I just heard the voice, and it was, I repeat, as if my inner ear would have opened. The first times that I heard the voice, I was surprised by the unexpected message emerged in jumps, energetic and swiftly, rhythmically fired as a ray. To present a better understanding of that quality of the phenomenon that happened to me, I'll give some examples. You're a psychiatrist, Nif, and I want, within reason, you to doubt about my sanity, because what occurred must be interpreted with an extension of the capacity to perceive, before that as a disease. I made a signal of assent. And trust to Uncle Kurt. Due to no one as me knew how many arbitrariness are committed around the authentic psychic virtues of man, those that are developed alone, or auto-developed, and exalts him without affecting in nothing his rational equilibrium, because they're ingreed naturally to the personality. Psychic virtues that are obtained spontaneously, without resorting to absurd occult methods, or gyms of transcendental meditation. that end to break the delicate mental order, and guides the disciple to the madness and death. I remember a day, continued Uncle Kurt, in which I was reading the Bhagavad Gita, Song of the Lord in Sanskrit. Holy Book of the India, Dick writing part of the great Pes Mahabharata, mystic war that involved on its struggle men, angels and gods, and whose memory the ancient wise men of the India wrote and collected. The Gita treats about the battle that must fight the hero Arjuna to recover the throne usurped by his cousin. Arjuna is a member of the warrior caste Kshatriya, and with him is Sri Krishna, incarnation of the god Vishnu. In the first part, called the regret of Arjuna, Arjuna moves with his chariot before the enemy army, realizing that beside his cousin great part of his relatives and friends have been aligned. 26. Then, Arjuna beheld there stationed grandfathers and fathers, teachers, maternal uncles, brothers, sons, grandsons and friends, too. 27. He saw fathers-in-law and friends also in both armies. The son of Kunti, Arjuna, seeing all these kinsmen standing arrayed, spoke thus sorrowfully, filled with deep pity. 28. 30. Seeing these, my kinsmen, O Krishna, arrayed, eager to fight, my limbs fail and my mouth is parched up, my body quivers, and my hairs stand on end. The bow, Gandhiva, slips from my hand and my skin burns all over. I'm unable even to stand, my mind is reeling, as it were. 31. 34. And, I see adverse omens, O Kava. I do not see any good in killing my kinsmen in battle. For I desire neither victory, O Krishna, nor pleasures nor kingdoms. Of what avail is a dominion to us, O Krishna, or pleasures or even life? Those, for whose sake we desire kingdoms, enjoyments and pleasures, stand here in battle, having renounced life and wealth. Teachers, fathers, sons, and also grandfathers, grandsons, fathers-in-law, maternal uncles, brothers-in-law and relatives. 35. These, I do not wish to kill, though they kill me, O Madhusudana. Krishna, even for the sake of dominion over the three worlds, leave alone killing them for the sake of the earth. 36. 37. By killing these sons of Dhritarashtra, what pleasure can be ours, O Janardana, Krishna? Only sin will accrue by killing these felons. Therefore, we should not kill the sons of Dhritarashtra, our relatives. For, how can we be happy by killing our own people, O Madhava Krishna? 38. 39. Though they, with intelligence overpowered by greed, see no evil in the destruction of families, and no sin in hostility to friends, why should not we, who clearly see evil in the destruction of a family, learn to turn away from this sin, O Janardana Krishna? 47. Having thus spoken, in the midst of the battlefield, Arjuna, casting away his bow and arrow, sat down on the seat of the chariot with his mind overwhelmed with sorrow. On the second part of the Gita, called the Path of the Discernment, Sri Krishna responds to the disquieting and distressing queries of Arjuna. 1. To him, Arjuna, who was thus overcome with pity and who was despondent, with eyes full of tears and agitated, Krishna, or Madhusudana the destroyer of Madhu, spoke these words. 2. Whence has this perilous strait come upon thee, this dejection which is unworthy of thee, disgraceful, and which will close the gates of heaven upon thee, O Arjuna? 3. Do not behave as a eunuch, O Arjuna, son of Pritha. It does not befit thee. Strip away that weakness of the heart and stand up, O scorcher of foes. Then, Sri Krishna advises Arjuna to follow that path of action, or karma yoga, and to comply with his dharma, with the destiny of the Kshatriya, which is to present battle and fight for the justice without worrying a priori, for the result of the battle, neither for the luck of the enemy even though they be relatives and friends. 31. Further, having regard to thy own duty, thou should not waver, for there is nothing higher for a kshatriya than the righteous war. 32. Happy are the kshatriyas, O Arjuna, who are called upon to fight, in such a battle that comes of itself as an open door to heaven. 33. But, if thou wilt not fight in this righteous war, you will not answer to your reputation, you will fall to your duty, and you will commit a sin. This must be thus, says Sri Krishna, because the reality is Maya, illusion, and the confrontation is circumstantial, only perceptible for who feels confronted. In a superior plane, spiritual, the oppositions are resolve, the confrontations a mere illusion. The spirit cannot die nor live for this reason, Sri Krishna said. 19. He who takes the self to be the slayer, and he who thinks he is slain, neither of them knows. He slays not nor is he slain. 20. He is not born, nor does he ever die. After having been, he again ceases not to be. Unborn, eternal, changeless and ancient, he is not killed, when the body is killed. 21. Whosoever knows him to be indestructible, eternal, unborn and inexhaustible, how can that man slay, O Arjuna, or cause to be slain? 22. Just as a man casts off worn-out clothes, and puts on new ones, so also the embodied self casts off worn-out bodies, and enters others that are new. 23. Weapons cut it not, fire burns it not, water wets it not, wind dries it not. 24. This self cannot be cut, burnt, wetted nor dried up. It is eternal, all-pervading, stable, ancient and immovable. 26. But, even if thou thinkest of it as being constantly born and dying, even then, O mighty armed, thou shouldst not grieve, for the inevitable. It only rests to face the conflict following the path of action, facing the opposite and complying with the dharma. Fear not to kill, says Sri Krishna, they are already dead in me. I was meditating about the precedent paragraph of the Gita, in the extraordinary moral implications that emerge from this ancient Indo-Aryan text when I heard the voice again. You mustn't deceive yourself by the superficial meaning of the concepts, O Kurt, man of pure blood. The message of Krishna is directed to the both natures of Arjuna, the animic, and the spiritual. To his animic part, to his nature of animal man, Krishna advises him to continue with the dramatic argument in which is involved for his karma. Arjuna is human, he is incarnated, and likes karmic circumstances. He must comply with the dharma, and resolve the conflict of the opposed archetypes. In such manner, he will realize the condemn imposed a priori by the lords of the karma of Shambhala, the incomprehensible condemn of the familiar war, that weighs upon his heart. But to his spiritual part, to his Aryan Hyperborean nature, the Siddha Krishna suggests him to transcend the opposites, not through its synthesis, which could be the war, but situating himself in the absolute instance of the eternal spirit. The spirit, the being, indeed, is eternal and uncreated, stranger to all the created opposites, which are not more than Maya, illusion. For the spirit, there is no created life, or created death, therefore, there is neither sin, nor guilt, neither debts, nor karma to be paid. If the decision proceeds from the spirit, the action would not produce posterior effect upon himself, because the illusion lacks of capacity to act over the reality of the self. And this, whatever be the action realized, even kill the relatives and friends. However, the kshatriya must comply with an essential condition, to allow that the spiritual nature to predominate over the animic or animal part. He must toughen his heart, he must throw out that non-Aryan weakness, that's to say, he must despoil himself of every compassionate feelings, towards whom are not but actors of a karmic argument, pure illusion. They don't exist really, they don't live, or, as Krishna says, they are already dead in me. This is the wisdom of the lords of Venus of Agartha. Only who possesses a heart hard as the stone, and cold as the ice, is a kshatriya. and only such kshatriya, can realize any action, even kill, without being touched by the karma. That is the power, O Kurt, man of pure blood, of the Hyperborean-initiated kshatriya, the semi-divine man, who has his uncreated spirit chained to the created soul. Such words, interrupted as a ray in my consciousness, filling me with perplexity, this, for many reasons. First, because the security invaded me, as I already said, that the voice was external to my being. Second, for the tone of the voice, firm and energetic, was at the same time a reliable and friendly voice. I felt on its presence, that it was not possible for me to distrust neither to doubt of the words, due to, that voice was emitted by someone superior to me. Someone who was coming to help and guide me. And third, because the content of these words, the concepts that reached my consciousness, were not always clear and comprehensible. This last must not be understood in the sense that they were obscure or veiled, but that such concepts alluded to things and situation unbeknown or forgotten by me. I say forgotten, because, in this feeling of veracity, which induced me to listen, the words of the voice coexisted as a reminiscence of a lost wisdom, of a forgotten truth. Shambhala, Agartha, Lords of Venus, concepts briefly familiars, that once formed part of some vaster knowledge, but that, inexplicably, I had forgotten without incapable to precise when or when, with security not in this life, and perhaps, not in the other life, but, in a state of the spirit, out of all life and manifestation. Of one thing I was sure. The truth was in the past, a remote past that, nevertheless, I could almost touch with the fingertips.